What's up, Ragin Nation? How's it going? This is Alex Yu, and I got a review for you. Last night I watched Hercules, and Hercules is in fact the second film to come out this year in 2014 that is about Hercules. The first film came out in January, and it was called The Legend of Hercules, directed by Renny Harlin and starring Kellen Lutz as the title character. And I didn't even bother to watch that one. That one was rated 3% at Rotten Tomatoes, and when I watched the very first trailer, it just looked really, really bad. Now this time around, this Hercules is directed by Brett Ratner and starring Dwayne Johnson as Hercules. And it's actually based off of the graphic novel Hercules, The Thracian Wars, written by Steve Moore. And I have no knowledge of that graphic novel. I never read the original source material. It is adapted from that source material, but I'm going to be reviewing this movie as a film. Okay, so I'm not going to be talking about how it's connected with the source material or how it stays true to the source material, considering I have no knowledge of it. I'll be reviewing it as a film. Now, with regards to the story, I won't tell you very much about it. I'm just going to tell you that when I watch movies like this, in this genre, and by genre I mean the sword and sandals genre, I'm very skeptical. In fact, I came into this movie with very low expectations, not because I thought or knew that it was going to be bad. I just felt that I felt that my expectations are pretty much the same with every other sword and sandals film. And by sword and sandals films, I mean that like movies like Troy, Gladiator, Braveheart, Robin Hood, 300, you know, where armies, like huge armies, they start off their battles by shooting arrows at each other from a distance, and then they come running at each other with swords, okay, swords and shields. So this is another entry into the sword and sandals genre, and therefore I just felt that, you know what, I'll watch it, and then if it's good, it's good. If it's bad, at least I can say that I watched it, okay? But you know what? I was sold by the trailers. When I watched the trailer in IMAX 3D, I was like, okay, this actually looks good. You know what? I'm very skeptical about these types of movies, but this actually looks good. So I went to watch it, and I gotta tell you, I was pleasantly surprised. I was actually very pleasantly surprised because I had my expectations exceeded. This movie was surprisingly good, and the main reason why I felt it was surprisingly good is because it's a very character-driven piece. And keyword being characters, because the characters in this film are very well written. Now, Hercules, played by Dwayne Johnson, you know what? He's exactly the way I expected. So nothing really that special, but I felt that Dwayne Johnson played the part really, really well. Especially, he played it really well in a physical sense, because he fights not with the sword, but he fights with this spiked club, and he's so badass because when he just swings it at people, he sends people flying. He sends the bad guys just like flying from point A to point B, and that's a very long distance, okay? But you know what? You know what I felt that was really strong about this movie is the supporting characters, the supporting cast. And I'm talking about Hercules' comrades, his brothers in arms. They're very well written, and they stand out as supporting characters. Not only are they very well written, but they're very unique, and they contribute in their own way in the battle, and they are just they're just very memorable, and they're very triumphant, and like they come out very triumphant. I mean, we get to know their backgrounds, and we get to see the development for each one of their characters, for each one of those characters, and we see the connection between each one of the characters. There's really great chemistry between these supporting characters, and I felt that they complement Hercules really, really well. So I actually loved every single one of these characters. Sure, I love some characters a little bit more than the others, but for the most part, I felt that they are very well written. I mean, very well written characters. Because a lot of movies like this, where you have like so many different characters, a lot of them are not very well balanced. Like, we don't get to see much of this one, or this one deserves more screen time. This time around, they're very well balanced, and in fact, I think that I like some of the supporting characters more than Hercules himself, okay? But, of course, they work great as a whole, okay? So the characters are a very strong point in this movie. Now, with the battles, with this being a sword and sandals movie, there are, of course, the battles. And I was just thinking to myself, how are they going to make the battles more interesting than all the other movies that I've seen with battles like this? Well, the characters really make the battles more interesting. The battles are very character driven, okay? Now we know what's going to happen in terms of the battles. They're going to shoot arrows in long distance and then they're going to charge at each other. What makes this great is that each one of the characters contribute in the battles in their own very unique way. There are tactics involved, and which makes the battles so interesting and fun to watch. And each one of them has their own specialty. Each one of them has their own like fighting styles and characteristics, which makes the battles so much fun to watch. So I really enjoyed the battles for what they are, but the character-driven piece about the battles really enhances it. And they are so beautifully shot. Brett Ratner actually does a great job as a director this time around, because I felt that he's kind of messed things up for X-Men: The Last Stand, but he does this story a lot of justice in terms of making it a very spectacular sequences, especially the battle sequences. They're very, very entertaining, and the movie just gets more and more entertaining as we continue progress through Hercules' story. All right, so really, really cool, and I gotta say a big thumbs up to Brett Ratner, because it wasn't just that the battle sequencers were so beautifully captured, but the direction, I mean, directing the cast members and getting the best performances out of the cast, and also the cinematography is great. I mean, it was shot on location, and some of that cinematography was just so beautifully captured. The battle sequences were so beautifully captured, and also just watching that landscape presented on the big screen looks so beautiful. So, and I also felt that a lot of the moments where you see these grand, huge, massive armies, the way they're captured on film is just so grand. So it's definitely something you gotta watch on the big screen, and I gotta say that I highly recommend this film. Now, with regards to the battles, there are really three major action sequences. Just like any other standard film, you have your beginning action, middle action, and then final climactic battle. Now, the first battle was great. The second battle was even better because they introduced new elements into it. But then I was thinking, how are they going to make the battle in the third and final climactic battle like even better? And then I felt like, okay, you know what? We've seen like huge armies battle each other. Now it's time for like a character moment. And you know, I'm not going to spoil anything here, but I felt that this is where Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as Hercules really claims his title as Hercules, because we get a true character moment, and this is where the story of Hercules comes full circle, and I love that. Okay, there's some really triumphant moments in this movie, and it's just great. It is great. The supporting cast is great. The title character is great. The direction is great. The action is great. The story is decent. And all the performances were top-notch. And you know what? This movie isn't perfect, okay? There's some, I wouldn't say it's flawed, but I would say that there's some cliches. The supporting characters are actually written very cliche. We've seen these types of characters before, and we see the characters written the way they are, and we see like some things that are very predictable about these characters, but it was executed very, very well. Okay, so even though it's something we've seen before and they're very cliche, you know what? They were still portrayed really, really well. And Brett Ratner did that cliche, did these cliche things very, very well. Okay, it worked as a whole in the movie. Another thing that I gotta say is a bit silly. Well, you know what? It's a comic book movie, right? But you know, one thing that was really silly is that these armies, they need training. Okay, they needed training. They didn't have a whole lot of training to face up against these other bad armies, evil armies, right? So they need Hercules to train them. So there's this montage, okay? This montage of them training them, and then suddenly they're the best army ever. They're literally the best unstoppable army ever. But it only took just a few minutes to train them. I know it's like a montage to show a passing of time, but still, it was a really quick progression. You know what? It doesn't make the movie bad in any way. It just makes me feel like, okay, they really just moved the movie along really fast. And that's another thing that I gotta point out. The pacing in this movie is very expert. And by expert, I mean expertly paced. There's no like long drawn moments of drama, no like melodrama and long moments of exposition. You know, I'm not saying those are bad things, but they are necessary when they are needed. Okay? And then, you know, they take a moment to talk about the background of the characters, and you know what? That's good enough. And the rest of it is all progression and development for the story, which is great. Okay, so very expertly paced. Brett Ratner does a great job with this movie. And also, the last thing I gotta mention is that there's some really great fantastical elements. By fantastical, I mean like fantasy elements in this movie. Because there's some, like if you watch the trailer, there's creatures in this. The way Brett Ratner handled the fantasy creature elements in this movie is very clever. Okay, very, very clever. I'm sure he took it out of the pages of the source material, but as a story for the as being part of the film, it was handled in a very clever way. I'm not going to spoil anything for you, but I just got to say that that was really that made a whole lot of sense. Okay? And that's all I got to say in this movie. It's a great movie. The 3D was great. It was a post-conversion process, but they did a really good job with it. For a post-conversion, it's probably one of the better and best post-converted 3D films that I've ever seen, because you really felt the depth of every shot, and also the 3D is very clean. So it looked really, really great, and I gotta recommend that you watch this movie on a big screen in 3D. And I didn't watch it in IMAX 3D, I watched it in regular 3D, and I think I might go check it out again in IMAX 3D. It's just that good. Okay, very entertaining film, very engaging. 8 out of 10. Okay, there you have it. I'm giving it an 8 out of 10, which is a very high score, and I recommend that you all check it out. And that's all I gotta say. As always, if you enjoyed this review, hit the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, like me on Facebook, The Ragin Nation. Also follow me on Twitter, @RaginNation. My name is Alex. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace. Smart movie trying to be dumb, or a smart movie that, you know, it just got dumbed down. Because a lot of what happens in